Hello and welcome to episode 9 of JumpCast, the podcast from the award-winning team behind JumpCut Online. My name is Sarah, I am your host for today, and I am joined by Holly. Say hello, Holly.
Hello.
And our main review for today is a big one. It is Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. It is the end of the Skywalker Saga. We've had some bumps in the road just trying to get this episode recorded today, but we are here now. We're committed. We're going to get this done. And we figured there's so much to cover with this film that we'll skip over the news for this week. And also, we're recording this just past Christmas, so I don't even know what day it is, let alone what's been happening. Yeah, what's been happening in the world of film. It's like a blur of quality streets and mince pies and cheese, and I don't know what day it is anymore. Saturday?
It doesn't even feel like a Saturday. I've lost all sense of time and place, really.
Yeah, who knows where we are, what day it is, but we do know that we will be talking about Star Wars. So I think let's just get right into the main event and get onto our review. So, The Rise of Skywalker. After Palpatine mysteriously returns, the Resistance faces the First Order once more in the final chapter of the Skywalker Saga. This is, of course, directed by J.J. Abrams. It is written by J.J. Abrams, Chris Terrio, and a whole host of others. And it stars, deep breath, Daisy Ridley, Adam Driver, John Boyega, Oscar Isaac, Carrie Fisher, Richard E. Grant, Ian McDermott, Anthony Daniels, Kelly Marie Tran, Billy D. Williams, and just a few others. And just a big heads up that we will be spoiling this film. We will be going in depth to character fates, outcomes, really big plot twists, and everything else. So if you have not seen the film yet, please go and see it, and then you can come back and listen to our review, and we will not feel guilty for having ruined anything for you. There's a lot to talk about with this film, so yeah, we can't do it without talking spoilers, really. So
it's impossible.
It is impossible. We're not that skilled, I'm afraid. But Holly, do you want to give us just your kind of quick overview thoughts on the film, and then we'll kind of get into things in a bit more detail?
Yeah, so controversial opinion, but I loved it. I really, really liked it. It wasn't sort of, I think, what I was expecting, but there were a lot of things I was really, really happy with, and you know what, it engrossed me for a whole 2 hours 20 minutes. Like I went to the midnight screening on the Thursday morning, and I was just I didn't have a single thought in my head for the entire thing because I was just so transfixed on what was happening. And for me, that's pretty amazing because I have like a very overactive mind, constantly thinking about things. But this film just completely shut off from the outside world. I was just focusing on this film, and it was just such a ride that I felt like I'd genuinely been on like a roller coaster by the time it had finished. Like it was so exhilarating. I do have like problems with it, so I'm not 100% positive about it. But for me, there's very little, there's very few flaws that are major enough that I sort of can't enjoy it. So it's one that I definitely did enjoy. Not my favorite of the trilogy, probably my least favorite of the trilogy, but it's still I still gave it 4 out of 5 stars. So yeah, no, I really enjoyed it. And I know you didn't quite enjoy it.
Yeah, I was just about to bring the whole thing down here, but in the interest of balance, yeah, on the whole, I was thoroughly disappointed with this film, and I think I was actually mad when the film finished.
Oh dear.
Yeah, I felt angry, I felt disappointed. It was not what I wanted. I don't even know what I wanted. I think we talked about this on our episode we recorded before when we were talking about the sequel trilogy, that I tried to go into this with absolutely no expectations whatsoever, and also not wanting for anything. I just wanted to sit and enjoy a Star Wars film. But there were a couple of things which I did mention in that episode, and we will get onto in this, that I really did not want to happen. And the majority of those things happened. So
Right.
it was very hard for me to not feel disappointed. And I think it is not without merit, and there are some things that I really, really do like about it. But I think that it packs far too much in. I think that it descends into fan service chaos by the end, and perhaps most unforgivingly, it retcons a fair bit of what made The Last Jedi so great. And that is the thing that leaves a particularly bad taste in my mouth. but I really don't want this episode to be overwhelmed by the negatives, so I'll get my rant out the way in a minute. But do you want to just kind of you said there's not many things you don't like about it, but do you want to kind of the things that you perhaps didn't like about this film, Holly, and then we'll go off from there, and I'll probably have a little rant. But yeah,
Yeah, cool. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, similar to what you said about they try to pack too much in. It's a very, very, very dense first act. It's kind of like I was really taken aback, really, because it seemed like they were rushing through everything, and they were rushing through things that were like really important. So Palpatine coming back and like trying to explain how he's come back, which they didn't really do, to be honest. And I feel like they put a lot of it in the opening crawl, with saying like, "Oh, the dead speak, Palpatine's back somehow." It's kind of like that's a huge thing, and you can't really just put that in the opening crawl and let that be enough. And I feel like they relied on that because they showed obviously Palpatine in the trailers, so they kind of relied on the idea that a lot of people knew that he was coming back. But like, if you hadn't watched the trailers, if you'd completely avoided everything, then you would have been like, "What the hell's going on?" Like, he literally died at the end of episode 6. So, yeah, that was, I think, clumsily sort of introduced. They needed to take a lot more time with that. I think just in general, a lot of the scenes just needed time to breathe. A couple of them did sort of more towards the middle. The pacing slowed down, but it seemed like they were just in such a rush to get all this stuff out, bam, 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 at the beginning. And then it made it quite confusing with bits of the plot because it was going so fast that you couldn't quite follow exactly what was going on, which is why I think this film definitely needs more than one viewing. And actually seeing it a second time, it makes a lot more sense and it doesn't feel so like overwhelming, chaotic. It seems a lot more structured. But definitely on that first watch, it was a lot. So that definitely was a bad point for me. The second one is this is for me is completely inexcusable. Was the treatment of Rose. Um, there was just absolutely no need to sideline her, keep her with like Leia or whatever. And that is one thing, that's one flaw that I can't get over. Like it does stop me enjoying some parts of the film because I'm just thinking, well, she should be there with Rey and with Poe and with Finn and with all that lot and Chewie and going on adventures and everything. And I just don't think it's. Oh, I mean, some people said like it's out of character for Rose to sort of avoid an adventure, which I do agree with. But then I guess at the same time, you could say like maybe she was so traumatized by what happened before and like people almost dying or whatever. But at the same time, I do think it would have been so much nicer if she had been there with the main group, and it just felt like she was missing completely. So yeah, that's definitely I think my biggest pet peeve with this film is just like what did they say? Rose had about a minute and 16 seconds of screen time, which
yeah,
is
it
just
was
absolutely ridiculous.
not enough. And I think it was someone pointed out that it was she has less screen time than what her sister has in The Last Jedi, and she is literally only seen at the beginning when she kind of she's releasing those bombs, isn't she? And she kind
Yeah.
of sacrifices herself for the greater good. So that I don't even know if we find out Rose's sister's name, and she has more screen time in The Last Jedi than Rose has in the whole of the Rise of Skywalker, and that is that is unforgivable. It makes me more mad the more I think about that, and I think what kind of plays into this a little bit as well is that you know they could try and defend it, I guess, and say, oh, she wasn't a big part of this story. It was more about the kind of the other three, and that's why she was sidelined, and we wanted to give some other characters some time and whatever. And okay, fine, but there didn't seem like a valid reason for her staying behind. And there is like literally kind of Finn is like, last chance, like, do you want to come with us? And she's like, nah, I'll stay here and just like do some stuff. And that was kind of like first red flag for me. But then I was like, oh, of course she'll be important later because she was very important in The Last Jedi. So maybe her work that she's doing kind of back at base will be the thing that kind of swings things towards victory, or she'll have some really important part to play. But she really didn't. She kind of crops up again at the end for a few lines, but it's what I can't help but think is that obviously you can't ignore the fact that Kelly Marie Tran was exposed to some pretty horrible online abuse from Twitter trolls, and who were really not a fan of her character in The Last Jedi, but they took it out on her in a way that was completely unfair, driving her off Twitter, and that was a whole thing around The Last Jedi. But it just seems that it's JJ or whoever kind of giving in to those whiny man babies on the internet who kicked off about her, and giving them what they want and saying, all right, you didn't like that character, so don't worry, she's not going to be a part of this one. But it doesn't make sense. Like, she was introduced in the sorry, I am going to go off. She was introduced in The Last Jedi as an important character. She was with Finn, like one of the main heroes, the main characters, and she had an incredibly important part to play. Whether you as a person like that character or not, it just makes no sense as part of the greater story and the greater character arc that she would be completely sidelined in the next installment. And it's you can't ignore that fact. You can't ignore that kind of what happened off screen, and perhaps that was the thing that played into this, and that was the reason why she is sidelined. And if I was Kelly Marie Tran, I would be feeling thoroughly cheesed off. And it's kind of a sad end for that character, because I actually really liked Rose as a character. I think you agree as well.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
And just to kind of have her in the background, and Hobbit Boy gets more like lines than she does. I don't even know that character's name.
Hobbit Boy.
Boy.
Yeah, is that the what's his name? Is it like Dominic Monaghan? Yeah.
We don't even know his character name. I'm going to look it up now because it's going to bother me, and I don't want to call him Hobbit Boy. Apparently he's called Beaumont. I mean...
Oh, when did they ever say that? I swear they didn't.
I'm looking on IMDb. He's not, barely even named, and it almost feels like... I mean, that just as a side, that really took me out of it, because he just looks like his character from Lost, so like it completely threw me. And I was like, what's Charlie doing here? This is weird. But yeah, it seemed like he's not been a part of the other films, so it was kind of like, let's introduce a new character who is a fairly recognizable face if you move in kind of geeky circles, and have him possibly take away the lines that could have been given to Rose. And that was just a weird decision to me. I just don't understand that at all.
Yeah, and it was like Rose said, oh yeah, I'll stay here to help Leia. But it's like there's so many people in the Resistance, and also like couldn't Billy Lord's character just have effectively had that role of being like Leia's like second in command or whatever?
Yeah.
And then let Rose, and then that would free up Rose to then go with the others, because I mean there were quite a few of them anyway, because there was Rey, Finn, Poe, Chewie, BB-8, 3PO. So that's 6 of them. Like, you could just add another person. Like, does it really make much difference? No. So, and it would have been nice to have seen Rose, interact with all the other characters that they meet, like with Janna and like Zori. And that's another thing. Actually, that segues quite nicely onto another more negative thing, that the secondary characters. There are so many new secondary characters that there was just no way that they were ever going to have enough time to fully really develop them, which is a shame, because I felt Zori I didn't end up caring much for, because we weren't really made to care much for her. She wasn't really amazingly important. Janna I really liked. I just would have liked to have seen more of her, especially when in the scene where she talks to Finn about how she was part of the First Order, she was a stormtrooper, and that she and a bunch of the other stormtroopers sort of mutinied, and then completely just broke away from it. Like, that was a nice scene, but I just would have liked to have known even more. And if this film had maybe had an extra half an hour onto it, we could have maybe done a bit more with that. But that's another thing.
Yeah, I think there was something that really interesting, particularly with the Janna character. There was something really interesting that they could have done with her and Finn, in that they came from similar backgrounds. They were both former stormtroopers, and that aspect of Finn's character seems like just over the course of the films, it's just been forgotten. And that was something from The Force Awakens that I found so interesting, that there could be, because before in the original trilogy, the stormtroopers are just kind of these masked goons that just very poorly most of the time shoot at the heroes, and more often than not end up getting shot themselves. But The Force Awakens then kind of gave us these new stormtroopers of the First Order, and saying actually they're not just kind of mindless goons. They're like children who are like stolen from their parents, who are then brainwashed and kind of turned into these killing machines or whatever. And you think, oh, that's really interesting. I'd love to explore that more. And you get a little bit of that with Finn. But then this film introduces another character who could, alongside Finn, develop that idea more, and it just does absolutely nothing with it. And then
Yeah.
I, I, the kind of weird like hint at the end that Janna might be like Lando's daughter or something.
That was weird.
I don't. And the thing is, it wasn't like. Oh, it was just so. It was too little, too late. It literally happened in the last like 10 minutes of the film, and I was like, no, that's not something that you like. You just kind of drop in and then leave us with. It's like, and also don't insist that everyone has to be related to someone else. It's
Yeah.
perfectly fine for her to just be another kid who was like taken from her family and became a stormtrooper and then rebelled. That's absolutely fine for that to be her kind of character arc, and there are still interesting things you can explore with that. And
Yeah.
this brings me on to maybe my biggest criticism.
Oh, here we go. I know what's coming.
You know what's coming, and I know that I don't necessarily agree on this, but we will, yeah. Okay, so there's that spoiler warning again, because this is maybe the biggest twist of the whole film. But the revelation that Rey is in fact a Palpatine, I have never eye rolled so hard in the cinema. I genuinely, I think we said when we recorded our episode before about the sequels that the people the world over would hear me sigh if it was kind of revealed that Rey was someone, that she was related to someone. Because I really liked what Rian Johnson did with The Last Jedi, and we're like, do you know what? She's no one. Her parents were not significant. She's not part of a family. She is just a nobody with, unexplained power. She obviously, has these kind of, incredibly like powerful abilities, which are explored even more in this film. But she's not part of the previous story. She's part of a new story, and I loved that because it really opened up the galaxy beyond just the Skywalker family, the Skywalker legacy, whatever we want to call it. And really liked that kind of closing shot of The Last Jedi as well, of Broom Boy, as
Broom Boy, yay!
Broom Boy, as we'll affectionately call him. Just kind of looking out to the galaxy and just sort of, no words, but just what is possible, that he could be the next hero. And I love that. And then this film, excuse my language, takes a giant shit all over that and is like, no, psych, Rey's actually a Palpatine. And just the logic of it is baffling to me, because where was this secret son that Palpatine had? And I think someone, actually, it might have even been in our Jump Cut chat, worked out the kind of chronology that this son would have been around at the time of Return of the Jedi, I think, or possibly not long after, in order for the kind of timeline to work out in terms of when Rey was born and everything like that. So it's something that doesn't fit in the Star Wars canon even. It's like, if Palpatine had a son, or, whatever, like surely that would have been, that should have been part of the story all this time, but it's not even mentioned. And again, that comes into kind of the film feeling that little bit rushed as well, in that it didn't really get the chance to explore these things or explain these things. Like perhaps it couldn't, maybe he wasn't a biological son, maybe he was kind of, a clone, or they took some of Palpatine's DNA, and I don't know, anything other than kind of like, no, Palpatine had a son, that son had a wife, and they gave birth to Rey. It's like, come on, it's lazy writing. I don't care for it at all, and I don't buy Rey as a Palpatine. I liked some of the stuff that followed as a result of that, which is Rey kind of battling with her past and choosing what she wanted to be rather than what her kind of blood right was, or anything like that. But I just yeah.
Yeah, no, I do that, and that's I think what you've just said is the reason why I'm okay with it. Like, I actually quite like it. It definitely took me by surprise. I really didn't see that coming at all. Obviously, we talked about our fears of JJ completely retconning everything that happened in The Last Jedi. I don't think he completely retconned everything. I still think I would still argue that Rey is she's effectively a nobody. Like, she grew up she raised herself, she grew up by herself. She fought for herself her entire life. She was just like a scavenger up until she joined the Resistance, and like, and I know that they say like Kylo Ren says in the film, your parents were nobodies. They chose to be nobodies, and it seems like a little bit of a get out of jail free card for JJ. But at the same time, I get what he's saying. Like, I feel like, I mean, we have no idea, like you said about don't know the relationship between Palpatine and his son. He may have been like an estranged son that like didn't know him growing up or whatever, and then Palpatine somehow found out about him, went after him, or God knows what Palpatine was doing around that time. I don't really want to think about it, to be honest. So, but yeah, and I still think like we don't know her parents' names. They were they were maybe appeared for like 30 seconds in the film. It didn't look like his son had any particular powers either. I mean, maybe that was just because we barely saw any of we only saw a tiny bit of them. But I still think she has that essence of coming from nothing, and I think what this film really drills home is that it doesn't matter what your bloodline is or who you're related to. And I think like Luke even says on that scene with when he appears as a Force Ghost on Acto, when Rey has just decided to go there and do what Luke did and just completely live out her life alone, he says something like, some things are stronger than blood. And I think that message that Ryan started in The Last Jedi still continues on in this film to an extent, and like Rey being a Palpatine adds a layer of complexity to the sort of conflict and torment that she was already going through. Because before it was just a case of like, oh, I'm really upset with what my parents did, but I'm having to accept it. And now, because of the Palpatine thing and because it's a real threat, she actually has something to fight against. Something that she's fighting against, like her fear of turning into something that she knows she's not, just because of her blood. And I love the dark Rey bit. That whole vision that she had, that was really cool. Wasn't long enough, but I loved that like visualization of her in a torment. But yeah, no, I do agree. It was like it was shoehorned in. It was very clumsily introduced. They were like, "Oh yeah, Rey, you're a Palpatine." I'm like, "Oh god, okay." It was, a little bit. It was quite a bit clumsy and a bit corny, but I actually, yeah, I kind of liked it. I mean, I think it helped that I wasn't because I know a lot of people were very attached to the idea of her powers, yeah, completely coming from herself and her not coming from the family. So I completely understand why people are upset, because were fully if you really related to that idea, and then to have that not actually be the case, I do get it. But I think, yeah, I was happy with her not coming from a powerful family, but then I feel like the film has proved that that doesn't really matter, because you can still forge your own path. You can still choose to be who you want to be, and choose your own family. And I felt like the sense of family was actually really strong in this one. Um, with them all rallying together at the end, especially like the penultimate scene, that one shot where the camera's moving out and it's Rey, Poe, and Finn just embracing for like a really long time. And I felt like that was the most important message of the film.
Mm. And yeah, it's strange because the result of Rey finding out that she is a Palpatine and the events that kind of follow that, with her battling her kind of inner turmoil and this obvious pull that she feels to the dark side, and then her coming to a place where she is able to kind of defeat that side of her and defeat her fears, and come to a place where obviously, they are victorious, they defeat the bad guys. But then the kind of, I think it's probably the final scene where she goes and buries the lightsabers. Now, there's a lot in that scene I don't like. I think it's super cheesy, the kind of like Force ghosts and like there's just parts of it that I'm a bit like, oh, come on.
Hmm.
But what I do, and the kind of like delivery of the like I'm Ray Skywalker, I was a bit like, like, but I like I like that as an idea that it is about the kind of chosen family. It's not about kind of, you know, your name is this, therefore you have to be this type of person. It's like, nope, I am that type of person. That's my bloodline, but I am going to, by the end of it, prove that I am different, that I am kind of breaking the mold, and I now have my chosen family, which, was Luke and Leia, and she kind of calls herself Skywalker. And
Hmm.
its execution was perhaps a bit clumsy, like a lot of things in the film, but I did like that as a sentiment. I think that elements of that could have still existed without her being a Palpatine. And it's not necessarily that I have like a problem with her being a Palpatine. I mean, I do. I think it's just that it really felt like too little, too late,
Yeah.
and it felt like such an obvious retcon of the Last Jedi as well, which was it on rewatch of the Last Jedi. It did kind of leave it at a point where you were a bit uncertain, like it had almost left that door slightly open about her possibly having a significant family, because you couldn't necessarily trust what Kylo Ren was saying to her.
Yeah.
But it was kind of like a lot of people were up in arms about that again, and were like, no, she has to be someone. How can she be nobody? You've teased this thing about her parents this whole time, and now she's nobody. So again, it felt like JJ kind of giving in to the comment section, to the noise around, the discourse around the Last Jedi, with people being so anti the decisions made in that. And I just think that, it's almost like a box ticking exercise. It's like, right, okay, people didn't like Rose, we're gonna write her out of it, don't worry. People didn't like the fact that Ray was no, don't worry guys, we're gonna take that out as well. And in trying to do all of those things, it doesn't necessarily stick the landing on the things that it needed to. And I think had the execution of Ray's lineage been better handled and had a bit more breathing room, then
Hmm.
it perhaps wouldn't have. It would have been a bit more palatable, I think. Um, but yeah, I don't know. There's a lot I don't like about this film, and I think that I could be here forever talking about those things. So I kind of want to get onto the positives now, because believe it or not, I do have some positives, and I am going to start with what I think might be your favorite thing about it, but was one of my favorite things. It's one word, the ship that we all wanted to set sail. It is Raylo. Raylo
Yes!
confirmed.
Raylo is real, everyone! Oh my
I
god.
I did like a little kind of fist in the air moment in the cinema, and I thought of you, Holly, almost
Oh,
immediately. It
oh
was like
bless.
I wish I could have been there just to see a little face light up and just be absolutely delighted. So yeah, you take this one. We know you're the Raylo stan of
Oh
the
my god.
JumpCast team. So
So, like, I literally, on the when we did the episode 9 preview podcast, I literally sat here and was like, if Raylo happens, if they kiss, you will hear me screaming from my cinema seat. And I swear to you, it took everything in me to not like actually scream right there and then from happiness. Like, I just, I will never, ever, ever forget being sat there and watching that happen. I felt like my life flashed before my eyes, because I was like, am I dreaming? Like, I'd been up since a stupid o'clock in the morning, and I was pinching myself like, oh my God, this can't be real. Surely I'm dreaming this. This is just a wonderful dream, and it's probably never going to happen. But then I got out of the cinema. I was like, oh my god, that actually happened, and like I can't explain how happy that made me. So much so that like when Ben went and died, I kind of like, it didn't even really register, because I was just so happy that they had finally like expressed their feelings and kissed, and I just can't. I still, even now, I've seen it twice and still can't quite believe it happened. So I was very, very, very happy with that. I never thought they would do it. I never thought they'd have the guts to do it, but then they did. So
yeah.
I can't be mad at JJ forever for the other things, because he gave me Raylo.
Yeah, we forgive you for that, JJ. And that, I feel like that's one thing that, again, people are kind of picking it apart, because they're like, oh, it's just JJ giving the fans what they want. But do you know what? Ignore everything I just said. I was happy about this.
But that's the thing. It's like, that's sorry, but like Raylo is one thing that and that and Ben being redeemed as well, that
Mm,
I don't see as fan service. I think fan service is a completely subjective concept anyway, because it depends on what
yeah.
side of the coin you are. But they've been, I'm sorry, but like if you couldn't tell from The Last Jedi that they were hinting at Reylo, then I don't know what to tell
Mm,
you. And like
yeah.
people will like, even more so now, people are like really, really, really defending The Last Jedi and Ryan Johnson, or as my friends and I like to call him, Raylo Johnson, because he absolutely like loves that dynamic, and that's why he did so much with it in The Last Jedi. And so it was so
Yeah.
obviously being set up then. So like it shouldn't really be a surprise that JJ then like brought that, into fruition. So I really
Mm,
don't think that counts as fan service. I mean, maybe they didn't have to kiss, but you know what? It really is like a meaningful gesture, and it really sort of says more than words ever could. So,
yeah.
yeah, so I was really happy with that, and I thought it was a natural end to sort of their arc. So I
Mm,
just thought it was, yeah, lovely. And then when Ben smiles, and you've never seen Kylo Ren smile in this entire trilogy, and then he
my heart.
smiles. Oh God, I loved it.
I was I went that was probably the biggest roller coaster of emotions, because I was so delighted about Raylo finally being a thing. And
Hmm.
you kind of have you think Ray's dead, and then he comes back, and then they kiss, and then he dies, and I was just like, I can't cope with this. Like, this is my emotions. I was concerned, I was elated, and then
Hmm.
I was devastated, and I can't. These are too many emotions to cope with. But I think that I don't yeah it's not a kind of I don't wouldn't consider that as kind of fan servicey as some of the other things, because it's not like it came out of nowhere, like
Yeah.
quite a lot of the things in this film you're kind of like, like that's not been hinted at before. But with Raylo, it's the chemistry in The Last Jedi is sizzling. Like,
Oh yeah.
it's you know that, given the chance, that absolutely that would happen. And it makes sense. It makes sense for those characters. It makes sense they have that connection. They kind of come from similar backgrounds, actually, as we find out. And you know they find each other, and it is this kind of, sounds super cheesy, but this like star-crossed lovers thing almost, in
Yeah.
that, the galaxy does not want these two people to be together, because they are on opposing sides for most of the thing. They fight, they had several kind of like duels between them, but then they've also got this kind of unmistakable connection and something that is drawing them together. And I think that kind of culminating as it does with the kiss was completely justified, and it was completely understandable. And I mean, obviously I loved it, because I stan as well. So
Yeah, yeah. And
but
that's
yeah, I
yeah.
go on, sorry.
I was just gonna say, and that's one thing I think that JJ actually carried on really, really well from The Last Jedi, is that he continued doing like the Force bonds,
Mm,
and the thing when so after they have their duel on the ship, like amongst the water, and then Ray obviously like impales him and then heals him, and then says like, "Oh, I wanted to take your hand, Ben's hand," and so obviously that calls right back to The Last Jedi, and actually they mentioned it before as well in another Force Bond, sort of when Ray's on Basana, and so he's kept that going from The Last Jedi. It's actually referred directly back to that, and so I feel like their relation, he's JJ actually develops their relationship through The Rise of Skywalker really, really well, so that it felt natural. Well, to me, it felt natural at the end when like their whole all their scenes together, and then when they kiss. So I thought that was like that was like the strongest point of the film, actually, their relationship, and also Ben Solo's arc as well.
yeah, I Ben Solo is still my favorite character in the whole series,
Oh,
and
same.
I know that is something we definitely agree on. And as much as I was absolutely devastated that he died, I've made peace with that now, just because I think that I'm not sure what would have happened if he didn't die, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
me too. I'm exactly the same.
Yeah, because it would be a bit kind of like too neatly wrapped up with a bow on top if, they had their moment, he survived, and they kind of skipped off into the two sunsets together and lived happily ever after. I just think that would be a bit weird. And
Yeah, and I don't know how, like, because I've thought about it a lot, like, how would they have actually done it had Ben survived? And it's like, because everything that happened after, when Leia reached out to him, he had a change of heart and decided to, be the hero. It was like literally only Rey who saw that. The rest of the Resistance would have had no idea. So can you imagine, like,
exactly, yeah.
if he had survived and then Rey, like trundled on back to the Resistance with Ben in hand and being like, right, guys, listen to me. I know you've hated this guy for like 4 years, or however long, but he's good now. So you all got to give him a hug and like move on. And I just can't imagine it just wouldn't have worked. It just wouldn't have made sense because there's no way realistically that they would just forgive and forget that quickly. And then I would love like in my head, I've always imagined, obviously, like Ray and Ben going off, walking off into the sunset together. But I just can't like imagine that working with the rest of the film. I feel like it would have been a bit too much too soon, and I don't know if it would be in Ray's character to like settle down with someone because she's very like adventurous and likes to do her own thing. So as much as I would love that, I kind of didn't see another way out of it unless they kissed, he survived, and then he went off on his own and she went off to the Resistance. But then that wouldn't make sense because it's like, oh well, you've just like basically confessed your feelings to one another, so why wouldn't you be together? So yeah, so I've made peace with it as well. I'm thinking that I didn't really know what else they could have done, to be honest, but
yeah.
I'm glad he was happy before he died anyway. At least he was happy.
Yeah, he had his little smile.
I
He was happy when
know.
he died. Oh, so good. But yeah, I think as well, without that moment, it would have been quite lacking in character deaths.
Yeah.
And you do need those kind of high stakes moments in the last installment. This is, well, they're certainly saying this is the last part of the kind of Skywalker saga and the films as they are in this kind of episodic way. But I'm sure spin-offs and whatnot, we will probably see at least some of these characters again.
Mm-hmm.
But it's kind of a criticism, but yeah, also not. In that there were a few too many kind of fake outs with characters and kind of like, oh, they're dead. Oh, no, don't worry, they're not. And kind of starting with Chewie, and then there were lots of it really lowered the stakes for me. But then the fact that they then did kill off a kind of major character, and two in one really, because obviously with Leia as well, that I was then kind of more okay with it. But it did kind of get to the point, I think, particularly when it was looking like Rey was dead, I was like, no, of course she's not going to be. Like, this is ridiculous. And because there'd been those so many kind of fake outs and stuff leading up to that, I found myself feeling quite apathetic. I was just like, no, everything will be fine, don't worry. But then on the flip side of that, it made the deaths that did happen really, really hit me hard, and I sobbed like a bitch when Leia died. I think it's just because obviously Carrie Fisher being no longer with us, and it was I thought very well done and very sensitively done. Given that they obviously didn't have much footage that they could still use of her, and I have my issues with the kind of footage they did use in this and how that felt a little disjointed, but I felt that moment where she kind of had that final, use of her power and her energy to reach out to Ben, and what she was able to do through that, but then she was then kind of able to pass peacefully. I really loved that, and yeah, I absolutely sobbed. So yeah, I think had there been no deaths at all, it would have just felt realistic, I guess. And yeah, am I missing any other like major character deaths? I know Hux and
I don't think so. No, I think that was about it. Yeah, I was absolutely fine, obviously, with Chewie like coming back because there's no way I would have been absolutely heartbroken if Chewie had died. Like, I just don't think I could have coped. Because it's just like it's Chewie, you can't kill him off. So that was fine, and like, I was so relieved when they were like he was on another transport. So I was like, thank God. But the 3PO bit, like, yeah, I'm happy he got his memories back, but it was very like, oh, bam, bam, bam. Oh, look, he's got his memories back. Let's move on. So it just like, yeah, that didn't work as well, I don't think. But it's not major enough for me to like not enjoy the rest of the film, if you know what I mean. So I was
Yeah.
just like, yeah, I can gloss over that. It's not a major problem. So
Mm. Yeah. I think, yeah, getting into some of the more kind of other things that we enjoyed about this film, I think despite it feeling a little overstuffed in the beginning, it did have some really, really good action set pieces.
oh
And I
yeah,
think the kind of the desert chase thing with the stormtroopers, that was really thrilling. And the lightsaber duel as well between Rey and Kylo Ren. And those were a couple of kind of my highlights points. I think it was a shame that we had that moment ruined in the trailer with Rey kind of like flipping over Kylo Ren's.
yeah, that's true.
Um,
Yeah.
because had I seen that for the first time in the cinema, it would have blown my mind. But I was like, "Whoop, she's gonna flip! She's gonna flip!" Like I knew it was coming. So yeah, it's impossible to avoid stuff, isn't it? Because even if I hadn't seen the trailer, I've been seeing gifs of that for months. So
Yeah.
you kind of know it's coming. But yeah, I think there were a lot of really, really good action set pieces in this film. I didn't had any particular highlights in that area.
Yeah, a couple. So the first one that I really, really enjoyed, I don't know. I think I saw one person like being a bit negative about it, but I've not really seen anyone else talk about it. Was right at the beginning when it's Poe and Finn on the Falcon, and they're like light speed skipping, I think they called it, where
Mm,
they were like
yep.
jumping between planets. I just thought that was so cool. For me, that whole sequence just epitomize what Star Wars is about. It was just so fun and just like
Mm,
over the top, but in the best way. And like seeing all those like them jumping between all those different settings. It was just really cool, and I just like that's a scene I would go back and watch 1,000 times because it just like it was just so much fun, and it was just so I found it like really magical, and that's one thing
yeah.
I actually thought was really really good in this film was so colourful. Like when they're on the journey to Exegol, when they're like well when we first obviously saw Kylo Ren go and then the rest of them go, when they go through like that really red atmosphere and it looks like they're
Yeah.
dry, it looks like they're going through blood or something, or like blood cells. It's bizarre, but it was so bright, and then that like contrast to the sort of really dark um blue tones of when they actually land on Exegol. So
Mm.
I just that's one thing I really really liked. Sorry, that was a bit of a tangent. So another was
Yes, right.
another action sequence I liked. Just everything from at the end when Ben goes to Exegol. Obviously, he's like had a change of heart and he's like shed his armor and he
Yeah.
like storms through Exegol with like his blaster, looking like Han Solo. He looks so much like his dad in that moment.
Oh, I
Um,
love that moment so much. Like just to see him kind of being a total badass, but without all the kind of armor and everything else. And it's just like that's like power stance he does, where he's just like got the blaster. I was like, yes to all of this.
so yeah, so good. And then when he's surrounded by the Knights of Ren, and then he's like struggling to defeat him, and he has that moment where he's looking at the camera, and then Rey does the same, and they're like obviously like telepathically like communicating, and Rey she puts her lightsaber behind her back, let's go, and then you see him like pull one from behind his back. She's like transferred it to him through the force, and then he like absolutely rips the Knights of Ren apart with the legacy lightsaber. And that is I just love that so much. It's just so
Yeah.
cool. It's just brilliant.
Yeah, I think that was probably my that and Raylo were probably my favorite moment. Like all of my favorite moments in this film are either with Ray or Ben Solo.
Agreed,
It's
yeah, me too.
They are my faves. But yeah, that fight scene where she sort of like passes the lightsaber to, it's just so damn cool. I loved it. And the thing is, that was something that we sort of covered this a little bit already, but that they did bring over from the Last Jedi was that kind of connection that they had. And I really liked actually that this film explored that in different ways. So it wasn't just that they could kind of telepathically communicate with each other. It's that they had this real connection that meant that they could kind of they could touch, they could kind of like connect in other ways when they weren't in the same place, and
Mhm.
to kind of uh to explore that with seeing it through a kind of like a fight scene or a really sort of highly charged action scene. I thought that was really, really great, and yeah, I did love that scene. I feel like that's one that when I will still buy the Blu-ray because I'm a completist and I want it in my collection.
Yeah.
But I that will be one scene that kind of like the throne room scene in Last Jedi that I just go back and like rewatch that scene just because it's so well executed and
Yeah.
just great. Love it. Um, yeah, I don't know if you've got anything else that you kind of wanted to throw out there, positives, negatives, or otherwise, anything else that you wanted to bring attention to?
I think I really wanted to get my thoughts out on because we touched on it a little bit earlier, but the scene at the end with Rey saying that she's a Skywalker. Because I feel like, yeah, it was cheesy. I mean, this is Star Wars, hasn't it always been cheesy for the last 42 years?
Yeah.
But anyway, that's beside the point. I feel like people are taking her calling herself a Skywalker like so literally. Like from the way I interpreted it, it's not that she's being like, oh, I'm like part of that family now. Like I'm a Skywalker, and no one else is. I see it as like the name Skywalker is no longer a family name now that they're all gone. It's become more of like, yeah, a legacy. It's a concept, an idea, and it's not about like what the name what was. It's about what it means and what it embodies. And I feel like it directly represents what Hans said in his scene when Ben obviously has the memory of him, and he talks to Han, and Han says about Leia, "Oh, your mother is gone, but what she stood for, what she like fought for, like lives, or something like that." And I feel like Rey taking on that name absolutely embodies that. It's saying the Skywalkers are gone, but what they stood for and what they fought for lives on in her.
Yeah.
And what I really, really liked is the bit where she combines the two lightsabers and makes like her own, and which obviously has the yellow kyber crystal. And I like that idea because it's like she's taking the legacy of the Skywalkers but making her own thing out of it. She's made something that is unique to her and that belongs to her. So it's not just like, oh, I'm just gonna carry on exactly what they did. She is doing that, but then she's also like forging her own things from that. And I like that the hilt of the lightsaber looks like it's got fabric wrapped around it, so it's like it feels very, very Rey. And I know I've seen people say like, "Oh, what was the point in her doing the whole lightsaber thing? Like, it was so pointless." I just feel like it was really, really symbolic of like where she is in her journey, having that legacy that she's going to carry on now, but being her own person at the same time. So that's just something I just really wanted to get out there because yeah, I do see the criticisms with it, but I did think it ended the film on just a really, really nice and hopeful note. Like it made me feel so warm inside. Like, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I actually did like that kind of sentiment. I think I did mention that a little bit earlier as well in her kind of taking on that name, but not being like, oh, I'm Ray Skywalker now. That's what I'm going to call myself. But it's taking on that mantle. It's taking on that ideology and
Hmm.
those beliefs, and she's still Ray, and she's just carrying forward that name and that legacy in her own way. And I do really like that as a concept, and I think that it also I've always liked the ambiguity of particularly the titles of The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker, even
Hmm.
though kind of confirmed like Luke was the last Jedi.
Hmm.
Um, we kind of know that not to be the case because we know there are other people who have those powers, and you know there was all the kind of like discourse around that film of like who really is the last Jedi. Is
Yeah.
Rey something else? Is she has similar powers to the Jedi, but is she something else and something different? So I liked that was kind of ambiguous at the time as well, and I think the Rise of Skywalker as a title is still very ambiguous, and I like that because it could be referring to Ben, to his
Hmm.
kind of redemption, his rise from the darkness, into the light, as it were.
Yeah.
It referring to Luke and Leia and the Skywalker legacy being something that is that kind of like torch that leads the galaxy into hope for however long. And I think that kind of symbolic passing of the baton moment with
Mhm.
Rey and the lightsabers, I did really like. And yeah, it, as I said, the execution a little bit cheesy,
Yeah.
but you go back and rewatch the throne room scene from A New Hope, and it is the cheesiest thing you've ever seen.
Oh my
So
god.
yeah, like I'm not mad at it, and I think that it's, yeah, perhaps not perfect in its execution, but in terms of what it means. And I think again, people have gotten really mad about her calling herself a Skywalker. They're like, what gives her the right? And blah, blah, blah. And it's, I mean, calm down for a start, but also it kind of covers two separate areas, like we talked about earlier, with that being her chosen family.
Yeah.
She's chosen to leave the name of Palpatine behind her and take forward the Skywalker legacy. And it is, like we said, that kind of that torch passing over. It's the longevity of the Skywalker legacy far beyond kind of this saga. It is something that will continue, that lives on. And I do really like that as a concept, and your power is what you choose to make of it and what you choose to do with it. As Rey kind of goes on that journey throughout this film, discovering who she really is and really wrestling with that as well. It's not, she doesn't sort of go, "Oh, I'm a Palpatine." That explains a lot, and
Yeah,
then
yeah.
moves on. She's torn, and she has these visions of herself on the Sith throne, and she has these visions of her kind of turning evil and all of those things, and not really being sure where she is going to end up, and wrestling with that as an idea. And I do like that journey, that where she ends up at the end is kind of perfect for that character.
Yeah.
um and I think in that sense it was something that came across well, although perhaps not executed perfectly.
Yeah, which is
um
just as like we said sums up the entire film really. Like some really nice ideas, really nice concepts, but maybe given a bit more time they could have been done a bit better. But there we go.
yeah,
There we go.
pretty much. I will very quickly, positive. I loved Babu Frick, the little
Oh my
dude
god.
who, I would die for Babu Frick. He's so cute, and I need a little plushie.
Yeah.
I want all the merchandise. Like him and Baby Yoda are my precious little angel babies that I would die for. So
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
love I love that. And just a very quick kind of final gripe. Something that again felt like JJ just kind of appeasing the people on the internet. I really disliked the bit when Rey and Luke's Force Ghost are talking, and she's about to throw the lightsaber, and he's like, have a bit of respect, like treat the weapon with respect," which felt like a kind of, because a lot of people were pissed off in The Last Jedi about Luke kind of just like chucking the lightsaber over his shoulder.
Mhm.
It felt like they were kind of like rewriting that, and I was like, oh, that's just really petty and really childish. Like, just putting that comment in there to kind of be like, I don't know. Again, it just felt too much like appeasing those who had been kicking off on the internet. And
I don't know,
yeah,
yeah, because I saw people saying the same thing, but when I saw it yesterday, the way that Luke said it, it sounded like he was just like being a bit sarcastic about it. Like if
okay,
it to
yeah,
me, I don't know, like that's just the way I read it. Like it seemed
yeah,
like a bit like he was being purposely ironic of being like having a go at Ray for doing this
mm,
thing when he did it like at the start of the Last Jedi. Also, I think
yeah,
because Luke changed so like he changed so much through the Last Jedi, so like if he even if he like really meant it and wasn't being sarcastic, I feel like it kind of makes sense because he completely changed his opinion about like his legacy and his past, and he was like learning to deal with his failures and all that. Whereas him obviously chucking the lightsaber behind him at the beginning of Last Jedi, that was because I think he was still in that um frame of mind that he was just completely disillusioned with it all and didn't want anything to do with it and had just completely closed himself off. But I do like I the way Mark Hamill read that line, I felt like it was a bit more on the nose, a little bit more sarcastic. So I mean, I don't know if people took it seriously, that's that's fine, whatever. But
yeah. I do see your point, and I have not seen the film a second time. So when I do, that will be something that I kind of look out for. But it just felt, at the time, it felt a little bit kind of like wink to camera sort of thing, and that
Right.
was a bit like, oh, okay, I could have like done without that, but yeah. The more time I spend with this film, the things that I was like so mad about in the beginning, I get less mad about, but then I don't know, it's very easy to fuel the hate fire again. Like, I'll see that thing. I only recently saw that thing about how little screen time Rose gets,
Yeah.
and that has like really like fanned the rage flames again. So yeah.
Yeah, I do definitely think that I know people have like really hated it, but if you feel like people you can give it a second chance, like go for it, because I found that it was just because you see you know what's going to happen, so you're not really focusing on the plot. You can just
Mm,
soak the story up, and like because you're not actually processing everything at the same speed that you would be the first time. And obviously
yeah.
with all the hype surrounding it and everything like that, now that it's had time to cool down and people have had time to think it through, and because I've literally thought about nothing but this film for about a week and a half, so and I think that helps. So yeah, definitely I think a second viewing is like absolutely necessary, if anything, just to make a bit more sense of the plot, which kind of goes here, there and everywhere. But yeah, I definitely would recommend it, because I think I've seen a lot of people actually who disliked it to begin with, upon seeing it a second time, are actually like, oh, actually, it's better than I thought it was originally. Still not amazing, but it's still, I view it a bit better now than I did before. So,
Yeah.
which is a positive
Okay.
thing.
Yeah. I will give it, for you, I will give it another chance and
Oh,
see
thank you
how
so
I how I
much.
feel at the end of it. So I think you've already hinted at your rating for this right out the gate, but yeah, your your rating out of 5 for the Rise of Skywalker.
So for me, I think it's a 4. Like it would, I don't think I could push it more above that, but I think yeah, a solid 4, which has taken into consideration how much I enjoyed it, how much I think it really, really embodied the essence of Star Wars, and how much it sort of emulated the original trilogy and that sort of whimsical spirit. Probably from a very objective point of view, if I'm looking at just the technical qualities, I probably wouldn't give it that much, but I'm taking everything into consideration here. So I think 4 out of 5 is my final rating.
Is very fair, and yeah, I try not to do half star
Mhm.
ratings, so I flit between a 2 and a 3 on this film, but
Okay.
I'm currently on a 3, because I think that the things that I really really do like, and I
Mhm.
like them the more that I think about them as well. But on the flip side, the things that I disliked, I can't see my mind being changed on a lot of those things, because I just think that they are in many ways unforgivable.
Yeah.
And I think that given a bit of space and given a bit of time and a rewatch, I think I will happily settle on a 3. I really can't. I would love it to go up. I would, because it breaks my heart to not enjoy a Star Wars film.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I'm pretty set on my 3 out of 5. So yeah, it didn't quite match up to Force Awakens and Last Jedi for me, and we're going to get to our ranking in a little bit. But
Yeah.
just a couple of reactions on Twitter. I sent this out very very late this morning, as everything seemed to happen this morning. So thank you for the to the 2 people who replied to my tweet, so I didn't have to fill time now. But at Ben Payton 007 said, overall, it was a satisfying conclusion and had a sense of fun lacking from The Last Jedi. But it could have been so much more, and where the hell was Kelly Marie Tran?
Yep.
Absolutely.
Amen.
Preach. And at Joey LDG says that it sits better on a second watch, but I'm not sure that that's a recommendation. The Rise of Skywalker is a mess, but it's a fun, entertaining, and great looking mess. Driver and Ridley give it all they've got. The John Williams score swells. Very Return of the Jedi, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. So I think a little kind of, yeah, on the fence, a lot of people seem to be. We didn't even get to the John Williams score. I
Yeah,
mean, just,
and actually, I wanted to talk about Daisy Ridley as well. That's another thing
yeah.
that's another really positive thing. Um,
Whoops. Okay.
oops, never mind.
Yep. Love both of those things. Of course, the John Williams score is going to be amazing because it's John Williams. And yeah, I think that Daisy Ridley and Adam Driver give 2 fantastic performances in this, and 2019 is still very much the year of Adam Driver, and hopefully going to be the year that he gets his Oscar as
Oh,
well.
fingers crossed. Oh God, if
But
as if the Star Wars discourse wasn't enough, now we're going into
yeah,
awards season, and I'm just like I'm preparing for the worst because although I know so many people who, like most of my mutuals like him to some extent, but I just like I don't know if I can be bothered. But yeah, I was just going to say about Daisy Ridley. I felt like I've been saying this to literally everyone. I felt like her performance in this film was her best performance as Rey throughout the entire trilogy. I thought she absolutely knocked it out the park. Like I was so convinced. I felt like she absolutely gave it her all, and she was just so good. That was absolutely one of the highlights for me. Like she was just brilliant.
yeah, I think she had the most to do in this film as well in terms of that um, inner conflict and stuff that we talked about a lot. So yeah, she really really great in this, and yeah, there's so much to talk about this film. I'm not surprised we forgot to mention the main character. But we can still chat more Star Wars because we are going to give our updated Star Wars rankings. So now that the Skywalker Saga is complete, I'm sure as many other people have been doing, kind of ranking those films. We've chosen to just do the Skywalker Saga, so it's just episodes 1 to 9 that we'll be ranking. So leaving out Solo and Rogue One. But Holly, do you want to go first and go in reverse order? So from 9th to 1st, your Star Wars ranking.
Okay. Oh, so starting with the worst one, right? Okay.
Yeah, worst first. Yeah.
Okay. So 9th for me is Attack of the Clones, and then 8th Phantom Menace, 7th Revenge of the Sith, 6th A New Hope, 5th. Okay, this is where I really struggle because I've put The Rise of Skywalker and Return of the Jedi around the same, which may be really controversial, but I'm just gonna for the sake of doing a ranking, let's put Rise of Skywalker 5th, then Return of the Jedi 4th, Empire Strikes Back 3rd, and then my second would be The Last Jedi, and then my ultimate favorite of all time, The Force Awakens, because nothing will ever beat that. Absolutely adore that. So yeah,
I love that. It's not, to be honest, not too much. I'm a little bit, the controversy of A New Hope being placed so low. But
I know. It's a good. It like to be fair, like I think what if I give it? So like Rise of Skywalker, Return of the Jedi, and A New Hope. They're all 4 stars. Like they're all 4 out of 5 stars. So it's kind of not really representative of how I view them. But I just find New Hope a little bit boring at times. There are kind of times where I'd zone out because I'm not that fussed about what's going on. But I do definitely prefer the other 2 films in that trilogy. But so it's maybe a bit of a hot take. But I know I do still like it. Like it's still a really good film. But it's just it's not one I would go back and like choose to rewatch over like the others. So
yeah, that's fair. And I think there's a real I'll get onto my rankings in a minute, but there's a real kind of disparity between what I've got at the top and what I've got at the bottom, and everything like 1 to 5 are all kind of 4 stars upwards. So even if something kind of looks like it places in the middle, you actually kind of look at the star rating, and then it's makes a little bit more sense. In fact, I was trying to sort my list by star rating so I can actually see what I gave them. Like I've got at my 5th, like that was when I gave half stars, but 4.5 stars, and then my 6th at 3, and then it kind of goes down from there.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, so like 1 to 4 are all 5 stars, as in on my rankings.
Yeah, I was gonna say, oh my god, if you gave the prequels like 4 stars, I'd be a bit concerned.
Could you imagine? No, I will. Let me do my rankings now, actually, before I confuse myself even more. So at 9th, I have also got Attack of the Clones.
Mm-hmm.
At 8th, I've got The Phantom Menace, and 7th, Revenge of the Sith. So we have the exact same.
Oh my god, amazing.
And here's where things get different. I've got The Rise of Skywalker at 6th,
mm-hmm.
and Return of the Jedi 5th. 4th is The Last Jedi. 3rd is The Force Awakens. 2nd is A New Hope, and 1st is Empire Strikes Back.
Okay.
So I am an OG trilogy girl. The Empire Strikes Back is in my favorite films of all time.
Mm-hmm.
I love it with all my heart, and I love A New Hope as well, but I completely understand some people kind of, particularly when it comes to comparing it to the later films, kind of thinking that there isn't as much action and it's a little bit slower paced,
Hmm.
and it is, but I love that kind of, it is the first film, and I think that it does so much in terms of kind of like establishing these characters and establishing this world without any kind of real context, and making you feel things for them. And I actually, we've left off the kind of anthology movies, but I really like Rogue One as well.
Yeah.
And Rogue One, I think, adds a kind of a little bit to A New Hope as well, because they kind of directly follow one from the other. So watching those two together is quite interesting, and it actually made me appreciate a lot more about A New Hope, because you kind of, when you've seen the thing that happens before, you realize, the sacrifices that were made to kind of even get to this point. And yeah, I do really like that. It's kind of interchangeable sometimes between Force Awakens and A New Hope. Like sometimes it nudges up to second.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, Return of the Jedi, my least favorite of the original trilogy, but I still have all of the original trilogy and Force Awakens and Last Jedi kind of at my top.
Yeah.
I think the easiest is the bottom, because
Yeah.
Attack of the Clones is an absolute steaming turd of a
It's just
film.
really not good. Like, I'll still enjoy it to an extent because it's Star Wars, and I will always enjoy Star Wars
Yeah.
to an extent. But it's just there's just nothing happening. Like the only thing I really like about it is like the score, because like
Yeah.
the love theme, Across the
Mhm.
Stars, I think it's called, is beautiful. But it's just like it's just a nothing of a film. It's just I couldn't even
Yeah.
tell you what really happens in it because I can't actually remember, and I watched it maybe about 2 months ago. So
Yeah, there's a lot of like really terrible CGI aliens in it, and I
mm.
for a really long time referred to it as a shit looking Men in Black. Like
Oh my god.
scathing. Oh god, it is awful. And Hayden Christensen as well is just, he's a terrible actor. I think he redeems himself slightly in Revenge of the Sith, but
Yeah, Revenge of the Sith is a good film. I feel like it gets a bad rep, but it's actually like I think I give it like 3 stars or whatever. But it's actually
yeah,
decent. Like I actually enjoy watching it, and I think it's just got some great scenes in it. Definitely the best of the prequels. So
easily, yeah. And I have like a weird nostalgia for the Phantom Menace,
oh,
just because
same.
it was the first Star Wars film I saw, and little 8-year-old Sarah absolutely loved the Phantom Menace. So there is that kind of like nostalgia for that, and also Darth Maul is a badass.
Oh
And
yeah, Darth Maul. I mean, like I think I probably watched Phantom Menace first when I was like 4 or something. Like I probably was a bit
mhm.
too young to be watching it, but
Yeah,
I absolutely loved Darth Maul. I can't even
yeah,
remember why. I just thought he was so cool with his face and his double lightsaber and just yeah, and Duel of the Fates, which I'm pretty sure I've banged on about a
so
lot in the
cool.
last couple of podcasts. But
Yeah.
it's just nothing beats it. So I think yeah, from a nostalgia point of view, I would happily rewatch Phantom Menace a lot. Um,
Yeah,
but yeah.
yeah, definitely. But yeah, so there we have it, our Star Wars rankings. I'm sure people of the internet will disagree with us, but you can, as long as you're friendly, you can tweet us and share your rankings, and
Yeah, definitely.
we'd love to see those as well. So I think that about wraps us up for this week. So just wanted to highlight some amazing people, our Patreons, who are so generous in supporting us, and special shout outs to Hugh Adamson, Zoe Baines, and our very own Daryl Griffiths for their support, and for everyone else who is supporting us through that as well. You can find out more about how to support us through our Patreon on our website, and different levels you can give at. And we really, really appreciate any support. We put out something recently about kind of our goals and aims for 2020, and that kind of starts with us getting some sweet, sweet dollar for our hard work. So we are super grateful for any donations through that. So thank you, big thank you to those people who we named, and everyone else as well.
Yeah, thank you very much.
So you're great. We love you. And I remembered this week to note down the names, so which is
Progress.
a win, a win for me. So also just want to thank you, Holly, for being a fabulous guest. And any final comments from you? Anything you want to plug? And where can people find you on Twitter?
So you can find me on Twitter at Holly Weaves. And obviously I write for Jump Cut, but I also write for Screen Queens, who are an amazing website championing women's voices and voices of those in the LGBTQ plus community, and everybody else. And you can find them at Screen Queens with a Z. Give them a follow. We also have our own podcast, Screen Queens podcast, so follow that as well, which is amazing. And that's about it from me. Thank you for being a great host, Sarah.
Oh, why, thank you. Thank you very much. And yeah, we, against all the odds, managed to get this episode out today. So I hope that, yeah. And just a little hello to Jacob of Jump Cut fame, who was supposed to be on this episode with us, but is ill. So yeah, he would have loved to have been on this, and we're sad that he couldn't be part of it and share his thoughts as well. But yeah, a big hello to Jacob, and I'm sure he'll be back on another episode soon, as we all will in the new year, I believe. My goodness, that is a thing that's happening soon. So you can find me, I'm at Sarah Buddery on Twitter, and you can find all of us at JumpCast_. You can check out all of our written reviews, features, interviews, news, and more at jumpcutonline.co.uk, and go straight to jumpcutonline.co.uk/jumpcast to find out where you can find all of our podcast episodes. We'll be back with some kind of episode in 2 weeks' time. Not sure about the content, but I do know it'll be great. And all that's left to be said is, may the force be with you. See ya.